Good morning. Happy to be at it here after a mini hiatus. It's Wednesday, February 5th. The multi-front war in the Middle East is now 488 days old. I'm your host, Jonathan Schanzer. Welcome back to the FDD Morning Brief. I just got back from a trip to Iceland. 2 days ago, I was standing on a glacier, and this morning, I got to say I'm a bit disoriented is an understatement. My plane lands last night. I turn on my phone, and wow, the phone starts blowing up like one of those Hezbollah pagers. The president says he wants to take over the Gaza Strip. I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around this. We'll talk about it momentarily. Today's guest is Professor Eyal Zisser. He's one of those top scholars of Syria in Israel, maybe one of the top scholars of Syria in the world, but he follows other things too. And I have to imagine he has a few thoughts about the new changes in America's Middle East foreign policy. At least that's what we understand. We're going to be speaking to Eyal in just a few minutes here on the FDD Morning Brief. In a press conference at the White House with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, President Donald Trump dropped an absolute bomb. The president says he wants the United States to take over the war-torn Gaza Strip. His statement came after Jordan, Egypt, Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia all rejected Trump's calls for the transfer of Gaza refugees to facilitate the construction of Gaza. Suffice it to say, Trump's comments went over like a Matisyahu concert in Gaza City. I know there are plenty of people out there questioning whether the U.S. should get involved in Gaza. Count me among them. Removing hundreds of thousands of Gazans to rebuild the coastal enclave would be challenging, maybe downright impossible. But here's the thing. The Arab states have refused to do anything. For 16 months, they sat on their collective keisters and did nothing to advance the cause of peace or the day after. Trump just called them out. They all know that Trump probably doesn't want to take over Gaza. It looks like an insane bluff. But do the Arab leaders know for sure? Nope. The Donald could be just crazy enough to do this. So if you want a positive spin on that wild press conference, here you go. Trump may be pushing the Jordanians, Egyptians, Saudis, Emiratis, and others to finally stop stalling and start to solve Gaza on their own. Do I think America should build Gaza Lago? No. But do I think that merely suggesting it could spark the beginning of a long overdue conversation in the region? You bet. Now for your headlines. Headline 1, Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara, a.k.a. Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, met with Turkish strongman Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Ankara yesterday. No surprise there. Erdogan is a patron of the new al-Qaeda regime in Syria. But here was the surprising part. Al-Shara and Erdogan reportedly discussed a joint defense pact. There could be some sort of joint defense agreement that could see Turkey establish air bases in Syria. Nothing's been finalized, but 4 sources told Reuters that Syria and Turkey are considering an arrangement involving Turkey's use of Syrian airspace and the establishment of Turkish bases in central Syria, purportedly to send a bold message to Kurdish fighters in the northeast associated with the Kurdistan Workers Party, the PKK, which Ankara wants to obliterate. But there are clear ramifications for Israel here too. The Turkish Air Force and air defenses would pose an immediate threat to the Jewish state. Tensions are going to rise if this happens, so watch this space. Headline 2, Iranian scientists may be exploring shortcuts to build a nuclear bomb. According to U.S. officials, a secret team of Iranian scientists has been looking for faster ways to build a nuclear weapon in case the regime decides to make a dash. Intelligence apparently started to trickle in during the final months of the Biden administration, and it was all conveyed properly to Trump's team during the transition. That's the good news. The bad news is that Iranian scientists and weapon engineers may try to shortcut the weaponization process to make a bomb in months rather than upwards of 1 year. Back at the White House, Donald Trump is ramping up his previous administration's maximum pressure campaign against the Iranian regime. That means more U.S. sanctions coming up, with new ones enforcing old ones and maybe even snapping back international sanctions and restrictions. One U.S. official said that Trump plans to drive Iran's oil exports to zero. Inshallah is all I have to say about that. Headline 3, President Trump is withdrawing the United States from the UN Human Rights Council. He's also suspending aid to the UN Relief and Works Agency, or UNRWA. These are good things. Both agencies are simply rotten to their core. Trump pulled out of the UN Human Rights Council during his first term, Biden reversed that decision. Now Trump is pulling the U.S. back out. Yeah, this is an international body of human rights abusers and war criminals. And don't get me started on their Israel fixation. In 2018, the year Trump last pulled out of the Human Rights Council, the council passed more resolutions against Israel than against Syria, Iran, and North Korea combined. As for UNRWA, President Biden justifiably paused funding to UNRWA after reports emerged that UNRWA staffers participated in Hamas's October 7th slaughter. But now we're learning just how bad it really is. 28-year-old former Hamas hostage Emily Damari's testimony about her time in captivity, that's giving us hints. She told UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer that she was held in UNRWA facilities during her 15-month ordeal, and she's not the only 10/7 hostage who said as much. All right, let's dive into that discussion this morning with Professor Eyal Zisser. Eyal is a professor at at Tel Aviv University, and he is going to be speaking us right now on the FDD Morning Brief. Welcome, Professor Eyal Zisser.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
Okay, let's start right now with just a question about last night. How do you interpret the president's statements about Gaza? And is there actually an opportunity here? Do you think this is feasible? How do you interpret what the president just said?
Wow, it was amazing. And I think it was amazing not necessarily because it showed us a clear and precise way, but, to think out of the box. All what we were told, all the plans, all the suggestions were totally failed in the past. Nobody has a solution. All what, people in the world and in the Arab world think is to let the status quo continue. This is to say, to leave aside the Gaza with 2 million Palestinians inside, with no real solution, with no real salvation for their humanitarian distress. And here comes the president and says, well, we need to think out of the box, how to solve things and how to work things out. And of course, by putting pressure on Arab countries that did nothing in order to solve at least the humanitarian solution. And clearly, without emptying Gaza out of the population, nothing will happen. Hamas will continue to govern and control Gaza. The suffering will continue. The threat to Israel will continue. So clearly, this is a positive signal. This is a step in the right direction, but you shake, the entire region. I do hope that the response eventually will be more positive.
I think so too, but I mean, let me just ask you. I was watching Bibi at that press conference. I don't know if you saw the video.
Yeah.
Bibi looked surprised. And he didn't say, yes, I love this plan. He said, oh, well, we need to study it. We need to explore it. We need to give it serious consideration. This did not seem like something that was coordinated in advance with the Prime Minister of Israel. If anything, I think Bibi came in just expecting or hoping maybe that Trump was going to say, well, we're going to give Israel the right to stay in the Gaza Strip and to defeat Hamas. This looks like a departure, perhaps, from what was discussed inside the Oval Office. What do you think?
Well, I think that for years, the Israeli position was that we need support and help from the United States, but we can do it ourselves. We can defend. We don't want the Americans to get involved. We don't want the American boys to be killed in the battlefield in sake of Israel. And we were all surprised. I think also Bibi was surprised by the comment that America will take over. What does it mean? And I think he was worried, everybody worried that, America will come and then, the huge challenges and the risk, and nobody expect American boys to sacrifice their life in the sake of the Palestinian and the Israeli. This is not the idea of the idea behind this exercise. So we still wonder what the president has in mind when he says we'll take over. To what extent there will be an American engagement, diplomatic engagement, military engagement, economic engagement. This is to be seen, I think.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, I think maybe just one last question on what we saw yesterday. I mean, do you think it's a bluff? Do you think he's just saying, all right, I'm going to put this out there and I'm going to force the Qataris and the Saudis and the Emiratis and the Jordanians and the Egyptians to do something because they haven't done anything at all? Or do you think he's actually trying to change the Gaza Strip, to build it up, to turn it into Gaza Lago, as we're calling it, to make Gaza great again? I mean, is this really the plan? Or is it just an attempt to shock the system, which, of course, I think we can agree the Middle East can use a shock here or there when no one wants to pick up the pieces of what happened after October 7th?
Well, he speaks business. That's very good. But in the Middle East, it's not enough to speak about, the prospects and possible achievements and gains. You need also the stick, not only the carrot. And I think this was the combination of, on the one hand, we can rebuild Gaza, on the other hand, the alternative is ahead. I really don't know. I mean, when we come back to Yitzhak Rabin, the late Yitzhak Rabin, people used to say to me, Rabin of the first term and of the second term were totally two different people. And here too, I see much more mature, much more experienced president. So generally speaking, I take him seriously, more seriously.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to now ask you about Syria. I know that you studied the Assad regime very closely. This is a moment, by the way, that I think a lot of us were going through this as a student of Hamas. You watch something that you studied for years, all of a sudden it doesn't exist anymore. It puts you out of business, so to speak. And it looks like as a student of the Assad regime, you're out of business, but you are still watching Syria. I met you in your office outside of Tel Aviv not too long ago. And I remember you showed me that book that you told me that Assad himself had touched, which is fascinating. But now there's no more Assad to speak of. I mean, he's enjoying, or I don't know if he's enjoying, but he's spending some time in a colder weather climate in Russia right now. But, in the absence of Assad, what do you think is going on right now in Syria? How do you assess what we can expect coming out of this country under the new Al-Qaeda regime?
Well, Syria was occupied. Well, it was controlled by Bashar al-Assad and the Assad dynasty and the army, which was loyal to him. And then it was occupied by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, led by Julani, now Ahmed al-Shara. So it's not a revolution, it's not a rebellion, it's not a popular protest. It was an occupation of radical force supported by Turkey that invaded Syria and took over this country. And if we had some thought at the beginning, now it's very clear. Jolani entered the palace, sat on the same chair where Bashar used to sit, declared himself president. Now he says, election maybe in the future, it might take 4 to 5 years. So it's clearly that he wants to rule Syria, and he wants Syria to be, that's the question. ISIS land, Afghanistan, like the Taliban, the Saudi model, the Turkish model. This we'll have to wait and see, but this is the direction. It's not going to be a Western European liberal democracy.
No, and I think the people who are now saying that, he changed his name from Abu Muhammad al-Jolani to Ahmad al-Shara, that he's now wearing a tie and a suit instead of a turban and a beard, a longer beard. There are people that are, I think, trying to tell us that this is going to be a more moderate state. But of course, we know that this is, of course, Al-Qaeda at its core. Nusra Front was the precursor to HTS. When you're backed by Muslim Brotherhood regimes like Qatar and Turkey, that's probably a negative indicator too. So do you think from Israel's perspective that this is going to be an enemy state? Do you think it's going to be a neutral state? How would you, I mean, I know we can't predict the future. It's hard enough predicting the past, as we like to say. But I mean, how do you expect things to unfold just in the next few months for Israel?
Well, he's very pragmatic, not moderate, but very pragmatic and very smart. You know, he's survived for so many years. He's the only rebel leader that survived and emerges victorious in his battles with the other rebel groups, and now with the regime. So he's smart, he's pragmatic, he knows how to play his card. I think that when he looks around, the immediate threat is coming from Iran. It's the threat that the Iranian, with the support of some local forces within the Syrian society, the Alawis, with the help of Hezbollah, will try, you know, to make a comeback. This is his immediate concern. We can feel it, we can sense it. And that's why Israel is not on his agenda, but we'll have to wait and see. I mean, you compare it to Gaza. I mean, with Sinwar too, we were told he's pragmatic, he's moderate. At the time, it seems that he was focused on domestic issues, rebuilding Gaza under Hamas. We will have to wait and see. It will take him several years, I think, if he survives. You know, it's a one-man show. If ISIS or the Iranian assassinate him, the story is finished. But it will take years till he establish himself and his regime, and then we might face a problem. But not only us, Egypt, Jordan, other countries as well, and maybe Jordan is more threatened because Israel is perceived to be strong. Jordan is vulnerable, and he might try to go there first.
Yeah, that's one to watch. All right, I want to ask you also about Lebanon. I know you've been studying Lebanon. That one hasn't put you out of business yet. That we're watching a lot happening right now. The folks that I talk to in Washington, the Lebanese expats, they're all telling me that Lebanon is on the cusp of something new and different and promising and exciting. And we have a new president, and the Lebanese armed forces are taking back the country. I'm not buying any of that. I think that Lebanon is a basket case. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right, and I don't understand the enthusiasm and the optimism in Israel as well, especially in France. Well, it's but also in Washington. The Lebanese, you know, many. I mean, I think most of the Lebanese do not like Hezbollah, but they will do nothing, and they did nothing in the past, and right now they will do nothing to confront Hezbollah. Now Hezbollah is pragmatic, is smart. He knows that now they need to get into defense, hide itself, and wait till the storm will over, and then he will try to recover its capabilities. I mean, during the last 60, 70 days since the ceasefire, I haven't heard of one incident where the Lebanese army attack, challenge Hezbollah, try to confiscate weapon. Where are the missiles? Okay, so they hide these weapon and they wait for the opportunity to come. And I'm worried, and I don't think that the Lebanese, without any, you know, pressure from Israel, mainly Israel, the Lebanese army will do anything against them. So it's not over till it's over, and clearly it's not over. The struggle for Hezbollah for taking control over Lebanon.
Yeah, I think we're just warming up over there. And I mean, when I was in Israel a couple of weeks ago, people were saying that the Lebanese armed forces had taken over one small area in southwest Lebanon, that this was the one area that Israel had agreed to hand over to the Lebanese armed forces. I have not heard anything about that experiment. Have you?
No, well, what we heard, it was leaked to the Wall Street Journal that there are Lebanese generals that provide information to Hezbollah from the operational room. And in some cases where Hezbollah was willing or was ready to cooperate. I mean, the whole idea is that we rely on the goodwill of Hezbollah. Now there is goodwill, but when there is a stable ceasefire and everybody will forget about Lebanon, about Lebanon, like in 2006, they will start to make a comeback and nobody in Lebanon will be too strong and will have the will to confront them.
Sounds to me like we here in the United States we just need to take over Lebanon too and rebuild it. It seems like that's the answer for everything these days. Last question for you. How would you just assess right now when we look at the overall Iranian axis? I know this is part of what you study when you were looking at Syria and Lebanon. And of course, Gaza is part of the picture. The Houthis are part of the picture. Everything's gone quiet since Trump came into office and since Israel has done quite a bit of damage to the axis. Do you think that this is a temporary pause? Do you think the Iranian regime and its proxies will try to test Trump and Israel under the current sort of status quo? That seems unlikely to me, but maybe I'm missing something.
Well, I think that they will prefer to wait and see to reach some sort of understanding, but the story is not over. Yes, it's a major setback for Iran, for Hezbollah, for Hamas, but they are here to stay, and they will use the opportunity to rebuild their power and their forces, and they wait, till the end of the Trump term, and then who knows, and they will try to make a comeback. We are in a point where, some laws on Hezbollah, on Hamas, on Iran may be very critical and significant. It's a mistake to stop at that point and to rely only on what we see as their good will, because there is no goodwill.
There is none. All right, I think that's a good place to leave it. I want to thank you, Eyal Zisser from Tel Aviv University, for joining us today on the FDD Morning Brief.
Thank you.
All right, that guy is super smart on Syria, man, and pretty damn good on the rest of the Middle East, too. Here's what FDD has on tap for you today. My colleague Hussein Abdul Hussein wrote a piece for the English-language Lebanese outlet This is Beirut. He's exploring Lebanon's evolution amidst Hezbollah's decline. Hussein emphasizes that with the new U.S. administration and Hezbollah's decline in power in Lebanon, the idea of peace, a term that has long been touted by the U.S. and Israeli officials, should now resonate as a guiding principle for prominent liberal voices in Lebanon. I'm not sure I think that's feasible right now, but I appreciate Hussein's bravery here. Man, that guy continues to push everyone in the Middle East to think differently. FDD's Max Meislich has penned an article in the Washington Times about South Africa's troubling pivot away from the West toward authoritarians like Russia, China, Iran, and Hamas. As Washington threatens to cut off all future funding to Pretoria, the question remains whether President Ramaphosa and his party, the African National Congress, will change course or continue down its troubling, if not dangerous, path. Finally, be sure to check out the piece in the Jerusalem Post by my colleague Jacob Nagel, former head of Israel's National Security Council, on Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to Washington. Bibi's trip covers numerous agenda items crucial to Israel's national security, with, of course, the most urgent being Iran's nuclear ambitions. Jacob argues that despite comments from the IAEA and others about potential negotiations with Iran, the very idea of nuclear talks should be entirely off the table until the Islamic Republic's nuclear capabilities are dismantled. But Trump floated the idea of a deal yesterday, so keep an eye on that. I, for one, am nervous. That is it for today, folks. I encourage you to check out the expert analysis on our website, fdd.org. Please read our quick takes on X at FDD and watch the videos we post on Instagram and YouTube. And as always, you can make that really important tax-deductible donation at fdd.org/invest. Tune in Friday for another episode. I'll be speaking with Representative Jared Moskowitz from the great state of Florida. That should be a good one. Thanks for catching today's morning brief. See you Friday. Until then, I'm a somewhat jet-lagged Jonathan Schanzer signing off for FDD.